just found a cracked piston on my rear caliper. The Shimano 4-piston, the 8120s. This is actually my second cracked piston. The larger piston here cracked on the front, cracked in a pretty significant fashion. A large chunk of it is missing. Fluid started pouring out of the caliper as soon as this one cracked. This one, not even sure how the heck I cracked it. Not sure how long I've been riding with it, but I went to go bleed the brakes the other day, and when using a tire lever to move the pistons back just a little bit, two of them moved really free and two of them were a little crunchy. So after investigating this, I found this piston. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys here what I did to fix it. Only need a couple tools. It's actually very simple. Didn't take me very long. It's not that hard to do. So just wanted to do a quick video. But two tools you're going to need. Going to need a 4mm Allen. That is going to be to remove the banjo bolt where your hose goes in. There are a couple O-rings on it, so as you back this bolt out, just make sure you're watching those O-rings. Second thing you're going to need is a T30. You got two bolts that hold the two halves of this caliper together. These bolts are different from each other, so you won't have to worry about getting them confused when you're putting it back together. I already have them broke free and most of the way out here just to save some time. And then when we pop this apart, I actually got one stuck in my hand here. So we have two O-rings. So we got to make sure those two O-rings are intact, that they look good, and that when we put this back together, then remember to put these two back in. But these are the two halves of the caliper. So when we're looking at it, the fluid actually comes in through one of the ports, and it flows through some holes that are drilled down into here. So we got a hole that comes out here, a hole that's drilled through here, comes out over here, goes in here, and comes out back here. Now, if we're looking at this and we look at it really close, other than the fact that there's holes drilled through, there's not a lot of space for little ceramic shards to hide. So one of the things I was concerned about when taking these apart was how much of a pain in the butt was this thing going to be to clean up? Was I going to go through all this work, try and clean it out, put a couple fresh pistons back in it, slam it back together, bleed it, and then have those little shards interfering with my pistons and causing them to crack, you know, a few hours down the road. Fortunately, there's really nothing to this. There's a pretty simple machining. Like I said, some passages, but once we get the pistons out, we're good to go. So, larger piston, smaller piston, okay? Inside, we have a seal that runs all the way around. Now, when my large piston cracked, I was actually bleeding the brakes. And one of the things I was doing was I was using the bleeding block off of an M8000, so a 2-piston caliper. This actually does not fit all the way across these two pistons on the side. It's meant for one big piston that goes right in the center. So what ended up happening is, even though I was able to get this squarely in there and secure, as I was bleeding, my guess is that the piston started to rock in the bore and just turned just a little bit with enough force and caused it to snap, and then that's when I got all the fluid out. So when that happened, right here, it's kind of hard to see, but this seal right here is actually damaged. So I went onto Amazon and I got a 4-piston replacement kit. It only came with the pistons. I took this apart, dug into it, and I found that this was damaged as well. We were kind of still in the middle of COVID, parts were hard to get, and it was actually easier and cheaper for me just to order a new caliper, so that's what I did. So I replaced the front brake with a new caliper. With the rear one that just busted, I had this caliper that was still left over, so I ended up using the piston that I popped out of here. So in order to get these pistons out, they can be kind of a pain in the butt. If this was a 2-piston caliper, all we would have to do is kind of seal off our passages and we use an air chuck. I like to use one with a rubber tip because you can actually get it in here and get it to seal really well. I have other air chucks that I like better for other things, but this is the one that works best for this. Once we get it in there, we're hoping that the affected piston that we want to get out comes out first. But on a 4-piston caliper with 2 pistons on the side, we're going to get ceramic shards that end up going through our passages and end up on the other side. So we technically want to get both of these pistons out, even if this one's not damaged. The problem with that is, as soon as we pop one piston out, we have a giant gaping hole where most of our air wants to come out. So you do have to fiddle a little bit with, I was taking and kind of putting these bolts back in their holes, covering up a hole, trying to get this in there. Took a few minutes of time to work the piston out. I was also allowing the piston to come out just a little bit, taking some mineral oil, some of the Shimano brake fluid, lubing the piston up and actually pushing it back in, trying to get this seal lubed up as good as possible. Once I got those out, there were a ton of ceramic shards actually on both sides of the caliper. And so blew it out, wiped it out. I ended up using a whole bunch of rubbing alcohol just to kind of get rid of that mineral oil so it wasn't sticky inside. And I was 100% confident when I was done that there weren't any shards left. So then it just came to getting our pistons back in. So fresh pistons, lube up your seal around the outside, lube up the piston, get these things in as square as possible. And remember, you have that seal in there that you don't want to hurt, and you're just going to press them back in. Press both sides back in. Made sure that my 2 O-rings were in place. Pop this guy back together. And then, my O-ring already fell out. Just drop the bolts in, okay? So, be honest, I never found a torque spec for these guys, for these 2 bolts. I went to 10 Newton meters. That's about what I thought they were when I broke it apart. If somebody has the actual figure, post it down in the comment section. It would help everybody out. But I just wanted to show you guys that besides the amount of time that it took to get these pistons out, there's nothing in here to be worried about. You're not going to have shards left over. If you can find a piston kit on Amazon, I've seen them on AliExpress, they're all over the place. You can even buy somebody else's broken 4-piston caliper or 2-piston caliper, depending on what you need, and seal the pistons out of it to fix your bike. These seals do pop out of here. Again, using the air chuck, you can kind of get some air behind them. They start to lift out. If you had an extra hand while you were doing this, you could get something gently behind it and pry that whole thing out. But there's not a whole heck of a lot to this. It was actually very easy to do. One other thing real quick. This was my old bleed block for the 8000s that I was using for this. Like I said, other than these little wings on it, so it's kind of hard to tell, it is not the right size. I just went and I had a little piece of MDF laying around. I'm not even sure what the heck why it's got all these other little holes drilled in it, but made this so it fits in there nice and snug. I also like to run my pads closer to my rotor than probably most people. So this is actually milled down just a little bit thinner than the regular Shimano bleed block, so that when I set my my brake levers up, that bite point is a little closer than kind of where Shimano has it spec'd out to be. So hopefully this helps you guys out. If you have any questions, post them. I'll try and answer. Thanks for watching.